And also turn off your cell phones or put them on vibrate. I hope I did that myself. Here, just a second. I don't know about you, but I have children that call at the most inopportune times. And okay, we're good. Good evening. My name is Jane Wanderer. I'm the current president of the League of Women Voters of Butte County. Tonight is the first of 6 candidate forums that our league is doing around the county. We have 2 here in Chico. A week from tonight, we'll be in Oroville with 21 candidates for about 4 or 5 races. After that, we will go to Gridley and do Gridley Bigs. Then we will go to Paradise and do their races, and then we'll be in Durham for a small school board race, 3 candidates, 2 positions. And so that we've got a pretty big schedule. Tomorrow, I want to promote something that we're doing as part of National Voter Registration Day. This is a national thing that a number of organizations participate in, and we will be at the 2 Butte Community College campuses, both Chico and the one out near Oroville, registering students between 10 and 2, and anyone else who wants to drop in. League members will be there registering voters. And if you want to know, even people in Chicago or New York can go on this website and put in their zip code, and it will find you a place to go register to vote. So it's a rather massive event tomorrow. I'd like to ask that there be no videos taken during our forum. We make a video of this and post it on our website after the forum. It should be up there within a day or 2. We prefer that the candidates not take any parts of our forum, our video. They are welcome to reference it on their website in total. We don't allow our video to be chopped up and used without our permission. The press is allowed to take pictures and video during this, and you can take pictures, but no flash, please. The first race, let me tell you a little bit about the League too. The League is a nonprofit, nonpartisan organization. We don't ever support a candidate, we never support a political party. But we do take positions on issues that we study. And we study them and then we come to consensus. And with member support, we will go forward and stand firm on various issues in the area of juvenile justice, water, clean air, climate control. There's a huge list, and if you're ever interested, go to LWVButteCounty.org, and you will see all of our positions and learn a lot more about the League there. I think we'll get started a little early tonight. We have an unusual situation. One of the races tonight is the Butte Glen Community College District 5 race. In District 5, the residents of Paradise can compete for that position. However, the position is voted on by 2 full counties. So all of Glen County and all of Butte County vote on these candidates. And we had 3 candidates for this one position. And this afternoon, about 12:30, one wrote me and said, I have flu and my foot's infected. And then I called one of the other ones, and he had a sore arm and was going to the doctor for a cortisone injection. And then I called Miss Gitman, and she was planning on being here. So what we decided, I did confer with someone from our state league. I contacted all of them again and said, you other 2 can give me a 1-minute statement. I will be happy to read it for you if you get it to me by 5:30. So I do have one on my iPhone from Mr. Clifford, so I will be Mr. Clifford for a few sentences. And then we'll let Ms. Gitman give you her 1 minute. And so that's a bit unusual. And then we'll go on with the other races, if that's all right. I think something like this happened at the last forum we held in June, where a candidate, I read a position statement for a candidate. So let me read you Christopher Clifford's statement for tonight. Isn't the digital age wonderful? My name is Christopher Clifford, and I'm a graduate of Butte College with 6 degrees. I have undertaken for the last several years an intense learning program through attending Butte College board meetings as well as meetings in Sacramento of the Board of Governors. I know the statewide system as well as the local system. I would consider it a great honor to serve you on the Butte College Community Board of Trustees. He was pretty concise. So that's the statement from Christopher Clifford. He's one of 3 candidates. The other is Mr. Thomas McLaughlin. And here's our 3rd candidate, Jackie Gitman.
That's right. Yeah. Good evening. Thanks for being here tonight, and thank you for letting me speak. For the last 9 years, I've lived on the Paradise Ridge, and I currently own 2 businesses up there. One of them is an employment agency. And after watching job applicants come to my office to apply for jobs and completely unprepared for work at all, after watching that for 7 years, I finally decided I needed to try to do something about it. So I decided to run for the Butte Glen Community College Trustee Board. I believe Butte College is being underutilized by the community, and that it can provide many more services to many more people than it is currently serving. For the last 30 years, I've managed employment and training programs, both public and private, and based on that knowledge, I believe the college has great potential and can make a huge difference. More people employed and better jobs means lower crime, higher home values, and a better quality of life, and that is good for everyone. For more information about me, contact JackieGitman.com. Thank you.
Thank you, Jackie. These candidates are also going to be speaking, I hope the other 2 will come, on October 7th up at the Paradise Town Council. Because they're from the Paradise neighborhood, I asked them to speak there as well. So hopefully you'll get to see them if you come up to Paradise. This is unrehearsed, so this is interesting to be going back and forth and changing names and things. Tonight I want to introduce some people from the league that are helping. We have our voter service director, Sean Murphy. Helping her is Claire Green, who is also our director of natural resources. Here, being one of our question screeners, is Marty Worley. Marty Worley is also on the board of league as a director at large. In the back, I have Marion Evans, who's a question taker. If you have a question you want to ask one of the candidates, Marion will get you a card, fill it out, she'll pick it up and bring it up to the questioners. We have Linda Furr, Diana Megri, and I think that's it. Did I miss anybody? Oh, our timers. We have 2 timers. They time the amount of time that the candidate is speaking, and they give them a little signal when their time is up. And we have Mary Lee Muter on the timing cards, and Carolyn Dusenberry with the stopwatch. From the press, we have Roger Aylworth from the Chico Enterprise Record and Tom Gascoigne from the Chico News and Review. And in our audience, we have a reporter named Sky from KCHO Radio. And so with that, I think I'll turn it over to Sean.
Hello, and thank you for coming tonight. This is a forum for State Senate District 4, State Assembly District 3, and for Butte County Assessor. Please hold all applause until the end of each individual forum so that we have more time so that candidates can ask their questions or answer their questions, and then we can all give all candidates a good round of applause when they're done. Candidates tonight will have 2 minutes to make an opening statement, 2 minutes to make a closing statement, and questions, they will have 2 minutes to answer each question. At the back of the room, as Jane mentioned, there will be people with cards, so if you have any questions that you would like to ask, please write your questions in a general way that can be answered by all candidates on the panel, as candidates will all have an opportunity to answer each question. No rebuttal will be given for the questions. Additionally, Jane also mentioned our timers. Our timers will hold up a 1-minute warning, a 30-second warning, and a 15-second warning to let candidates know how much time they have left to answer the questions. The candidates each drew a number to decide who would open first, and the reverse order will be given for their closing statements. With that, we will begin with the State Senate District 4 candidates, Mr. C.J. Jawahar and Mr. Jim Nielsen. Additionally, as Jane mentioned, the Chico News and Review and the Enterprise Record are both here, and so they will be helping me ask questions. So the newspapers will ask their questions first, and then we'll have an opportunity from the audience members, and we'll go back and forth asking questions of the candidates. The candidate who drew the lowest number was Mr. Jawahar, so he will open first, and then Mr. Nielsen will give his opening statement, and the closing statement will be Mr. Nielsen giving his closing statement first, and Mr. Jawahar having the last statement on closing. So with that.
Thank you, Sean. Thank you, League of Women Voters, and thank you, voters, for coming here. It's been wonderful. I was here by myself before the primary. Actually, I'm more thankful today just to have a chance to get away from Roseville. Roseville, Sacramento, Auburn, all the areas all under smoke. A lot of ash, and this is good. I really wish Butte stays the way it is. It's really difficult. What I'm trying to say is, with all that, climate change is real. Okay, we need to do something about it. There are 1,000 fires going on today in California compared to last year. Last year, the world total pushed about 40 billion tons of carbon dioxide into the atmosphere. And that's what we are seeing now, the prolonged drought. I used to wonder how our ancestors used to handle these wildfires. They did not have fire trucks. They did not have helicopters. They did not have fire deterrents. You know what they had? They had water. They had water plenty. And that's how they controlled the fire and protected themselves. Look at us now, where we are. Year after year, decades after decade, because of this poor management, we did not store enough water for farming, for drinking, for industrial, and to protect us from fires. So there are a lot of things I'm here to share with you tonight. Thanks for coming. I'm ready to answer your questions. I'm pleased to meet Senator Nielsen. I met with him last Monday. I'm here again. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen.
Good evening, and thank you to the League of Women Voters for again.
The green light on.
There we go. Good evening, and thank you for coming, folks, and League of Women Voters. Thank you for again helping to inform the public that they be good, intelligent, knowledgeable voters. It's a pleasure to be before you again. You know, many years ago, as a young farmer, I realized that most of what was affecting my ability to produce and profit as a farmer was government, and what I was doing was complaining about it. And I decided that more was required of me than just complaining and voting. So I began to get involved in my industry as a leader. I got involved in my community as a leader. I got involved in the Republican Party as a leader. Then I took leave of my senses and ran for the state legislature. And you know what I found is nothing but frustration along the way. And of late, the state of things is such that those frustrations are even greater. But I found out that one citizen's strong voice can make a difference. That means your voice as well as mine. My voice individually and my voice as a representative of all of you. My voice in the state legislature as I articulate the positions about the integrity of the legislative process and being true to the people that the legislature represents. In California, the economy and jobs are our most important issue, and government is the most limiting factor that is harmful to our economy and the opportunity to provide jobs in this state. And further, we have a public safety crisis of unprecedented magnitude. I know that because 18 years I served on the board of Prison Terms, the largest parole authority in the world. I've looked at this up front and personal. We can each make a difference.
Thank you, Mr. Nielsen. Candidates will answer questions starting in alphabetical order and go in alphabetical order for the forums. So starting with a question from the news.
So I'm addressing this to Mr. Jawahar first? No.
Questions are to be asked of both candidates, addressed to Mr. Jawahar first.
Yes,
yeah.
okay. Do you support Proposition 1, the water bond, and why or why not?
Absolutely, yes. I've been a proponent of a water bond for a very long time. Senator Jim Nielsen also on board. We are just agreeing on just one. Why I'm supporting? I've been a proponent to store more water. I just told that at my introduction, my opening statement too. I'm so glad the legislature decided to set aside $2.8 billion to build 2 reservoirs, one at sites and one down south. And that is very important. We let 150 million acre-feet of water into the ocean. We should have done a good job in storing that water for our farming, for our industrial purposes. We don't have water today, so our agriculture is down, so job is down. And I'm going to talk more about job later on, but let me stick to the water. And when I say water, it is not just surface water. The bond has water to reclaim the groundwater. That is very, very important. $800 million to clean up the water because of mindless drafting of groundwater years after years. So now we need to do something about it. That's why I am for regulating the groundwater, and so happy that $100 million been set aside for groundwater management. So those are the reasons why I like and I support Water Bond 1. You also, I request the voters to support the 2. Thank you.
Prop 1 is a must support. I've been a part of every water negotiation since the 1970s, including in 2009, the major policy changes in water in California at that time. Those were significant in that they asserted for the first time in many years that humans had a water right. They asserted that everything about water was not delta-centric, meaning only about the delta. And I speak as one who used to represent the delta. But all of the needs of water are not fixing the delta. They're upstream, downstream, and they are east and west. That was a significant achievement. But in that bond, it never got to the ballot. So here we are today, and in this last year, some extensive hearings and negotiations occurred. Thousands of hours, just like in '09, thousands of hours were expended in meetings, Tuesdays nights and Thursdays night, and hearings around the state to come up with some kind of consensus. And lo and behold, on the water bond, there was a huge consensus, an almost unanimous vote. There are only 2 votes in the whole legislature. That's almost unprecedented. The key to this bond that is before us, it allows up to $2.75 billion for storage. So we do not have to share the scarcity of water anymore, that we will actually enhance supplies for human use, for agricultural use, for environmental use. There will be Sites Reservoir in Colusa County and Temperance Flat down in the valley. That's a huge, significant, bipartisan accomplishment.
Thank you. Mr. Allworth? Oh, rather, thank you.
One of the issues that's been very hot in Butte County for the last 3 or 4 years has to do with the control or regulation of medical marijuana production in the county. Where do you individuals come down on the side of regulating cultivation of medical marijuana?
Well, let me go first on this. First of all, I see the need for medical marijuana, narrowly defined as was passed by the voters of the state of California. That is not how medical marijuana has been promoted and accepted, and I have a problem with that. And the most important entity to regulate that would be the local communities, not the state. There have been attempts to have a state agency created to oversee medical marijuana distribution in our communities. That's the worst way it could be done. And it would be nothing but promoting more and expanding the use of marijuana for much other than medical purposes. So I stand with the county ordinance here. I think they've made good progress, and we ought to let it be, as is. The county speaks first, and keep the state out of it.
I spoke about marijuana a couple of months ago. I'm still having the same position. I'm glad we have the medical marijuana in place today. It's been working for more than 10 years. Now I think we are at the crossroad to expand that, looking at Colorado and Washington upstate, what's happening with their legalization of marijuana. I support legalization on 2 grounds. One is to stop the illegal cultivation of marijuana in the farming area, where they mess up with the upstream water, mixing the chemicals illegally they use in those marijuana farms. And that is affecting other farmers because of those chemicals. So that is a big concern. I believe the area legislator, assemblyman, brought that out. There was a big news a few months ago. So I am with him. We need to stop illegal cultivation. How we stop? By legalizing that. The second one is the crime related to the marijuana. We talk about the prison population overwhelmed. So how do we do that? About 30% of the prison population is because of the drug-related offenses. Okay, when we consider a criminal justice reform, the directly related topic is legalizing the marijuana. And of course, the economy is involved. You know, if you can make this, if you can legalize and then tax this, that's the way to go. I'm not rushing right now. I believe we are looking at 2016 ballot measure on this. And I respect the local government's control on that, but let's not take a piecemeal approach here. We need a state-level legislation for marijuana like Colorado and Washington. Maybe we'll learn lesson by then when we get to the prime time. Thanks for asking the question. It's a very important question. Thank you.
Thank you. Next, we'll take a question from the audience. This is a 2-part question going back to the water issue. And the question is, do you support the takeover by the state of ag water management if there is a long-term drought situation? And do you have any ideas for more surface water storage? And that question goes to Mr. Jawahar.
Thank you. Very important. Water has been part of my life. I grew up in a farming family. I know the importance of every drop of water when it comes to farming. Coming back to water grab or government taking away the water, here's my thought. I shared the same thought at Yuba City at another debate. Starting 1914 till today, state of California issued about 12,000 water rights, junior water rights, senior water rights, what have you, to the order of 370 million acre feet. On an average, what we have on the surface, I'm talking about the surface water, is about 70 million acre feet. So we just kept giving the rights without even having that size of water. So when we want to streamline, so that is the way to go, whether it is underground or the surface water, we need to regulate so everybody benefits. Let me share a story. I don't want to name the county from the Central Valley. One gentleman, he has a well, a water well. So he started pumping water to the adjacent county, selling the water and pocketing $15 million into his pocket. That is wrong. The surface water is for everybody. You can use it, I can use it. We have the right to use it, not the right to sell it. So likewise, underground water is also must be for everyone. So that has to be regulated, and I'm so glad that has been legislated. And the county governments, the local government, the water districts, they will have more power to regulate it. That's the way to go. Thank you.
Water is absolutely critical to our agricultural industry. We cannot survive in this state economically without that industry being sound and prosperous, productive. And it cannot be without water. That's why the storage facilities of sites, Temperance Flat, are so critical in this bond down. For the first time since Orville, we can have statewide impoundment of water that can do groundwater recharge as well as being used for environmental use, but particularly for agricultural use. But we are at peril now. Who from our government that I talked about earlier that is usurping local authority and local power? And in the case of water, usurping historic water rights that date indeed to 1914. Those water holders are senior water rights holders. There are other senior water right holders and then junior water right holders. Now the key to that is trust. Trust that that covenant of your government with you in terms of your water is going to be met. And now that is beginning to be violated by the water board usurping, coming in and saying, no, we're going to use your water for something else. We're going to regulate how much you can pump and tell you when you can pump and when you can't pump. That's a very, very dangerous precedent. It's happening in all agencies, but in terms of water, it is particularly critical. That cannot work for agriculture in the state of California, and we've got to push back to ensure that that legislation is made reasonable, as well the groundwater legislation that now has passed that is also usurping local authority and allowing the state to absolutely positively control your groundwater, which has historically been a water right of the individual landowner, a historic water right, and now a property right, if you will, and now we're going to say, no, no, the state can tell you what to do with that right. That's absolutely wrong, ladies and gentlemen. There are ways to conserve. Agriculture has been preeminent in conservation.
Thank you. Another question from the audience. Proponents of a higher minimum wage contend that it results in economic growth. Do you support a raise in the California minimum wage, and if so, to what level? And that question goes to Mr. Nielsen to start.
No, I have not supported minimum wage. Minimum wage extensions, and particularly the onerous provisions now linked to minimum wage of an automatic cost of living increase every year, only ensures that entry-level individuals will not have jobs. It always works to the contrary as to what the noble and the intended would like to do. We have cities like San Francisco. Obviously it costs more to live in San Francisco, but they put their minimum wage up to an exorbitant level. And then that sets the standard for communities like this one. It drives out jobs. It drives out the most important jobs, those entry-level jobs. No, the minimum wage is not the answer to the economic growth of this state and the economic well-being of our individuals. It is getting government out of the way to stimulate entrepreneurial investment, entrepreneurial creation of wealth and making of jobs, providing opportunities to employ people instead of imposing a minimum wage that does just the opposite.
I support minimum wage increase. There are multiple towns, cities in California has enacted locally, anywhere between $12 to $15, San Jose, San Francisco, Davis. It is important. About 100 years ago, it took 2 years to give a raise of 30%. Of course, in terms of the dollar amount, it was very minimal at that time. We're talking about $1 to, let's say, $1.20. or $1.30. But here we are after 100 years. We are stuck with the minimum wage for a very long time. And that is impacting a low-wage families and the middle-class families. So let me ask one question. There are about 19 million workers, wage earners, I would say, in California. So if you raise $5, just pretend we are raising $5. So now you do the math. So that many billion of, when they get the raise, obviously a couple of $100 a week, where do you think the money would go? That's not going to go into an offshore account. That will be spent locally, at the state, in the country, right? So that is going to be circulated within this, and that money is going to go back to the businesses, and that is the way to go. That's a very, very simple economy. It's no-brainer. People have been talked about that for a very long time. I know some people don't like the idea, but when you go out to the field, I've been going around my district like probably 10th time, Chico probably 20th time. Wherever I go, homelessness, poverty, 1 in 5 people in my district live below the poverty line. I have told that many times. How do we do that? Give them a job, and give them a good job. Give them a living job, not a minimum wage job. We are in America. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Gascoigne?
Addressing this to
Mr. Jawahar?
Mr. Jawahar. Where do you stand on the practice of fracking, which is the extracting of oil and gas from shale rock? It's a very hot topic here in Butte County, and
Thank you. Thank you
wonder
for
what you
asking the
think.
question. I know I am in the hot seat. Thank you for Butte County being a good fighter for the fracking. I myself been fighting for the fracking. That's one thing Capitol and I don't look eye to eye. I know we have a lot of reserve. The reserve can be explored, but not with this dirty technology. Why I hate fracking is the fracking involves water. Out of the past 15 minutes or so, we've been talking about water a lot. It does not make a sense to put billions of gallons of water to extract another billions of gallons of oil. Now, after the fact you extract the oil, what are you going to do? The oil mixed with toxic chemicals and the oil. There's no way you can reclaim the water. Now we are at the 3rd year of the drought, and if we talk about fracking, that's insanity. Now, if anyone shows me, I'm an engineer, if anyone shows me a neat technology to extract oil or the natural gas, I would be the first person to sign up. Trust me. I know there are about $25 billion worth of shale oil in California. But folks, I want to tell you this. If you let them have their hands on that, they will extract them and they will walk away, sending all that to the Middle East or maybe even faraway places. And you and me will end up hugging not trees, those little thingies, the black oil heads. We don't want to get there. Thank you. No to fracking. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Some of the Air Board's own surveys indicate we'd be looking up as high as $7 a gallon gasoline in the state of California. My point is we cannot take care of our water or our energy future by sharing of scarcity. Hydraulic fracturing is a proven means of developing needed energy resources. Gas and oil, natural gas, that's a big thing around here. It's tried and proven. It has an enormous economic impact. And there's ample evidence to show that it can be done safely. It would be very foolhardy for Americans, Californians, to take that resource off the table. It would be prudent and wise to utilize that resource, to develop future and more safe technologies even than we have enjoyed today. But build to our energy future by basing it in part on supply in part on conservation, but in having an energy basket of many sources of supply. This, in my opinion, is a soundly proven one. Hydraulic fracturing should proceed.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Roger.
If I can figure out how to push the button. Here we go. One of the issues that's been important in this county and probably the rest of the state has been AB 109, the movement of prisons, the maintenance of prisoners out of the state's control and into the hands of counties who, in many cases, don't have the facilities to be able to meet the demands put on them in this area. What do you think about AB 109, the way it's operated, and what do you foresee in the future?
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I speak with authority and passion. For many, many years, I was the head of the California Board of Prison Terms. I've been a part of California when we were safe and there was justice in criminal justice. Now you are not safe, and the criminal justice system has been turned upside down with AB 109 and some of its precursor followers, following legislation. We are not safe. AB 109 has got to be changed and justice restored. One of the ways to do that is to oppose Proposition 47, which reduces sentencing. What that does, it destroys justice. If you do a crime, you should pay the price. This diminishes it all. And there is the false assumption attendant to 109 that there are non-serious, non-violent, non-sexual offenders that are being released. That is absolutely incorrect. Read any newspaper that you want to. Look at what's going on in downtown Chico or in downtown Reading in terms of our public safety. The cuffs have been taken off our law enforcement and put on, off the criminals and put on law enforcement. So AB 109 has got to be changed. And remember, the courts did not say release 40-some thousand plus unrehabilitated felons into our communities. They said fix prison health care. There are other solutions which I can talk to you at length about, which I have been advocating since 1992. 109 is not the answer. It's the worst bill ever passed in the history of the state of California.
109, I've been following it since it was enacted late 2011. Senator Jim Nielsen and I agree that it's not working. But how do we differ? So he is still having the same solution of the last century. Build more prisons, lock them up, throw the key away. We need to be smarter than that. He talked about Prop 47, which is going to be on the ballot about criminal justice reform. That's the way to go. I work with a local non-governmental organization in Placer County looking at the jail system, Placer County. They came up with a master plan about a week ago, and I was at the meeting when they gave an introduction to the master plan. They did not approve it, but it was an introductory session. Things are not looking good. Obviously, the jail system is not capable of handling the diverted population, the offenders from the prison system. How do we fix it? Is that by building more prison would solve it? No. That's what we did for years after years. It did not solve the problem. The solving the problem is, we need to revisit the justice system. We need to look at, when you sentence someone, look at the risk element. How risky the person, the individual is to repeat the offense. If not, if the individual is not, risky enough, reduce the sentencing, rehabilitate him or her, and put her back into the community in a very graceful manner by educating, providing some technical skill, some trade, so that job is a criteria. Job would only stop them from going back to the revolving door. So that's the way to go. Thank you.
Thank you. What are your views regarding climate change? Do you believe it exists, and if so, do you believe it is man-made? And what actions, if any, should the North State take to combat it? And that question goes to Mr. Jawahar to start.
In my opening statement, I'm glad you asked the question, so I have another 2 minutes to explain what I was talking about earlier. Climate change is real. It's a science. Only politics says no. Okay, so keep the politics away. Just look at the science. I'm sure I'm in a Chico town which has a university. I'm sure some of you are from that university. Maybe you went. So we are all educated. Look at the number. Here we are, prolonged drought, fire after fire, and that fire again pollutes the environment. How are you going to contain it? How are you going to get more rain? How are you going to store that water from the runoff? How are you going to protect our towns and our state from the clear cut? So these are all interrelated. The data shows where the problem is. Some of us, the voters and the politicians, don't want to see those data. So let's come to the table. AB 32 is in place. Thank heavens. California is a place of 38 million people. As your legislator, I have to look at every segment of my society and protect them. I just want to give you one data. Down south in Central Valley, there are more people dying from a poor air quality, from respiratory related diseases compared to accidents, compared to car accidents. About 500 more in a one given year. So that's where we are. Are we going to pass the same state to our generation? My daughter is sitting there. She is a 5th grader. And your grandchildren are going to live in this state. So I am so much concerned that after my lifetime, I got to leave a state, leave a country, which should be a place for my generation to live, have a happy life.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
Jawahar. Mr. Nielsen?
Climate change has been real since there was an earth. It ebbs and it flows with cooling and warming over the eons. That's not a new phenomenon as it's been promoted. It's just something that happened. And it didn't just happen because of human beings. What do you think it was like around here when Lassen and Shasta were spewing forth? And there weren't any humans around in those days. Our response to these situations, global warming, global cooling, must be a deliberative and balanced approach that takes into account that humans do live on this earth. Humans have a need to a healthy life and environment. Humans have a need and a right to have economic opportunities. And the promulgation of regulation and legislation related to climate change in California, even under AB 32, has been indeed draconian and has hurt the average citizen's ability to work, to have a job, to build a business. It's discouraged businesses from expanding in California. In fact, they are leaving, and that's one of the reasons. Look at climate change not as a cataclysmic disaster come to visit upon us, but something historic that we work with, and we work with in a balanced manner.
Thank you. I have another question here regarding water. It is obviously a very important topic to the North State people. And the question is, if water storage is the solution as advanced in Proposition 1, then how do you explain spending billions more on new storage when the current storage we currently have is basically empty? And to follow that, where do you stand on enforcing water conservation amongst users?
Well, will you go first?
Mr. Nielsen, yes.
Well, first of all, storage is absolutely essential unless you want to build your future on a sharing of scarcity. And it's a specious argument to say that we've got empty reservoirs, so we don't need any new reservoirs. folks, we already had a supply crisis when Shasta was full and Folsom was full, and when Friant and Pine Flat were full. No, that's not the issue. The issue in the total amount of water available for all of the uses that I defined before, we must have more resources. Now, in terms of conservation, let's understand, and let's use agriculture as an example. My industry has been preeminent in conserving water, using less for its crops, not the wasteful thing that it has erroneously been lambasted about. We've been the best. And why? Because a state agency told us that we had to and put regulations on us and fined us? No. But because it was to our economic advantage to do so. We spent less money with our water, buying and securing our water, because we could use less. We spent more money defining and employing new conservation means. The agencies get involved, fine tinkering, get caught up in their awesome power, and ladies and gentlemen, the agencies of government are our enemies. They are not our friends usually, though there are wonderful people who work in state government. I love them. But I spend, and my staff spends most of our time working on your behalf with agencies who are arbitrary and capricious. And when you give them that extra authority that we've now just done, it only gets worse.
Dams. Let me start with the point I brought up earlier. What are we going to do about the 150? On a wet year, we let 150 million acre feet into the ocean. So that's exactly my focus would be. Where and how to store part of that water. I'm not asking to, just to give an example, a Folsom Dam can hold about 1 million acre feet of water. In that rate, we need about 150 more dams. Am I suggesting? No. There could be some dams, but there are other ways to store water. I'm from Roseville. Roseville has a huge aquifer underneath. So this is what we did. When we get plenty of water, we pump, actually, city of Roseville gets water from the Folsom Reservoir. So when we get more water, we pump the water, excess water, into the aquifer. So that's what we did a couple of years, for 2 years. This year, when we did not get water from, because the Folsom Reservoir became a dead pool, we could not draw water anymore. So we started drawing water from our aquifer. So what I'm trying to say is, wherever there is a possibility to store water underground into your aquifer, that's the way to go. Off-site, like Calusa, Sites Reservoir. If it is not possible with those two ways, we can always go to an on-stream dam. Now, the conservation, there are many techniques being applied in California. I am a proponent of water recycling at multiple levels. And if it takes to cut down our lawns a little bit, that's a way to go too. Pools, we can manage, if we could manage those pools, we can conserve some water. And desalination is another way of making some additional water. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
All right, here's another topic that's been kind of hot locally, and that is, where do you stand on the issue of requiring the labeling of GMOs, which are foods that contain genetically modified organisms?
Thank you. Yes, on labeling. This is the reason. I was looking at the data. Because of the genetically modified the vegetation, what they try to do is they pump more chemicals called fertilizer into their farmland to increase the productivity. So what happens next? So when you apply fertilizer into your farming more than needed, so that's going to end up into your aquifer or your the water streams. So that is very damaging, to the order of 500 billion pounds of excessive, this is the data, I'm not just throwing it in the air, this is into those farming lands in America. So that's why I oppose those GMO products. And labeling is very important. We should have a choice to pick what I need. If it is genetically modified, if I choose not to use, I have the right to avoid that. How do I know? Only by that labeling. And there are related issues for GMOs. There are tons and tons and the diseases I can list. I couldn't remember on top of my head, but we are in digital age. It's no brainer. Please go look up a GMO-related diseases. You will get long diseases. So it might help businesses, but guys, I always think about people. Okay, any decision that we make, we have to make sure we have to have a point of return. I don't want to do anything which does not give you a point of return. Thank you.
There are all kinds of businesses who do identify on their labeling not using GMO technology. They can do that already. What I don't believe in is having government dictate that or discourage genetic modification. The success that we have had in the world of feeding each other's, and I have traveled in India, the International Crops Research Institute of the Semi-Arid Tropics, I even remember that long name, how we were breeding wheat varieties for lower stature so you didn't have all of the straw to deal with, that you got more of the actual wheat head, the food, where we could significantly enhance our production. And with this technology over the years, we have been able to significantly reduce our use of fertilizers and of agricultural chemicals. Now, I'm only speaking to the agricultural industry right now. We've been able to reduce it, not increase it. It does help if you, again, want to feed the people. There are certain things that are required. You need land, you need water, you need farmers. You need other resources to be able to do that. And you need technology. The technological revolution that we have enjoyed for some 5 decades in America is why we are able to feed the world and not have massive famines around the world. I've looked it in the eye in India, ladies and gentlemen. I think we've done a fine job balancing genetic modification and ensuring public safety. And again, if anyone wants to put the label and use that as a marketing tool and advantage, they can do that all together today.
Thank you. And our last question tonight will come from the Enterprise Record.
Recognizing that it's a federal issue and not directly under your purview, but the issue of access to the national forests for recreation, for the use of off-road vehicles, for camping, for the harvesting of timber is an important issue in Butte County that hasn't always been readily available to county residents because of regulation in the national forests. How do you feel about that? What, if anything, could you do as a state legislator to make these things more available?
Okay. Who's first on that one?
Mr. Nielsen, you are.
Well, let me take a stab at it. Well, access to our forests and our wildlands is a critical right and opportunity of Americans, I believe, that has in many cases, because of government, been denied. And because of, for decades, we have not managed our forests and wildlands. This enormous accumulation of fuel that has made these cataclysmic fires that just don't burn the foliage, but that sterilize the ground. That's what this smoke in the valley this very day is all about, not having managed those forests and wildlands. And that means being good stewards, and that means having some logging and brush removal in those forests and those wildlands. Meaning good management practices. In terms of recreating, the off-road vehicle folks have been absolutely ripped off and defrauded by our government, whereby they, and I see it as a member of the Budget Committee, and I rail against it every year, They pay these exorbitant amounts into this fund that is used for other purposes, including balancing the rest of the budget, for which they do not receive any benefit, which is a violation of Proposition 26. There is no nexus to a benefit to them making that contribution to the state. They've been ripped off. They've been further by the national authorities, more so than the state. They've been precluded, stopped from going into areas that we historically were able to visit and recreate in. It's kind of an anti-citizen approach of government, trying to deny us access to resources that we truly should be able to enjoy and participate in with our families.
I agree with Senator Jim Nielsen. This is our country. We should have free access to the recreational area, the forest area. But the problem is uncontrolled access. So that's exactly what happened to the King Fire. One senseless visitor, when he does a simple mistake, that is going to take toll on the entire region. Thousands and thousands of people, hundreds and hundreds of homes. So who is going to be held accountable? Putting him behind the bar is not going to fix the problem. So if it takes some guidelines for the visitors into those precious forests, that's the way to go. I don't have all the data in front of me. Being a legislator, probably he had access to those data and he spoke about it. But I can tell you this. If you, as a citizen, have been hindered, have been stopped, that is something I would certainly look at it to help you to have a free access with guidelines. About logging is a huge issue. I probably touched upon a while ago, clear cut, especially in the Sierra area, more you cut, less will be the rain, so you are going to face the consequences. So we have to, as a citizen, we have to make a decision which way we want to go. And again, fees to access those recreation, that's one area I need to look at it. If it is exorbitant, we can definitely look at it and help our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. We will now do closing statements, and the order for closing statements, Mr. Nielsen will start, and then Mr. Jawahar will finish. Thank you.
Thank you to League of Women Voters, and thank you citizens of the Chico area of Butte County who have come here tonight to see us in this forum. You're seeing government the way it can work. Mr. Jawahar and I actually agree on a number of things. And we're respectful enough of each other that when we have those disagreements, we can do that in an agreeable, amicable way. We know how to identify things that we have in common and build on those things in common, and that's what I've learned in the legislature, and that's why I have been successful. Most recently, and two of the highest accomplishments of my whole career, the water bond, Prop 1 and Prop 2, the Reserve for Economic Uncertainties, which finally, for the first time, ensures that 1.5% of our budget will go for these economic uncertainties, such as untold fires that we don't anticipate. It also is an effective governor by reducing the state budget by 1.5% every year, holding the budget cap to a degree. And that's an achievement of defining where you have things in common. But further, there has to be a bottom line, your values, your common core values, and the discernment that you have of what the people you care about, that you represent, care about. And that legislator needs to stand firmly on behalf of the area they represent, like I have for area of origin water rights, which we got in the 2009 water plan, and which we've now got in the bond before us to protect those water rights instead of allowing government to take them. You have to have that ability. When I first ran as a farmer, look them in the eye, shake hands and make a deal kind of guy, I said to the people, I'm only going to promise what I can deliver. And I know I can deliver this. I will work hard. No one will work harder than I will work on your behalf, and I will listen to you. I keep that pledge this very day. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Senator Nielsen. We agree to disagree on various topics. I applaud you and the legislature for bringing up the Prop 1 and Prop 2. But the question is, what did we get between 2013 January and today for the district of Senate 4th District? So that's a question. That's why I'm running. How many jobs were created in our backyard? How many light industries were brought into the district to match with the agricultural activities? What did you do to help the students having many community colleges and one university in our backyard? What's been done? So these are all the questions I asked myself when I decided to run. There have been multiple legislation were enacted in the legislature over this period of a year and a half. And I was looking at what the other senators from down south, east and west, what they took from the legislature to their district, and what came into my district. Zero. In terms of jobs, in terms of industry. Before even I get a chance to serve, I've been a proponent. I worked with the local non-governmental organization, with the Tesla, and similar organization to bring jobs into District 4. And all that I ask you is, give me a chance. Here I am, engineer for 25 years, have a good family, and I'm here to support you with your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Jawahar and Mr. Nielsen.
Thank you.
At this point, we'll take a very brief 5 minutes at max to switch out our forums and bring on our next candidates. If we could have everybody start moving back to their seats so that we could get the next forum moving in the interests of timeliness, that would be great.
You guys did so well. No, you can.
All right, thank you. If we could go ahead and get started with the California State Assembly District 3 Forum. Perfect.
Counting the ice cubes.
So the candidates drew to decide who would do opening statements first, and tonight the opening statement first will come from Mr. Gallagher, followed by Mr. Reed. You will each have 2 minutes for your opening statement, 2 minutes for questions, and 2 minutes for closing. And Mr. Gallagher, go ahead.
Okay, well, first of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters for putting on another forum for the voters. In the general election, we were back here in June, or before the June primary, and it's always a pleasure to have an opportunity to talk to the voters and explain our views and opinions on the issues, and to have a good discussion going forward. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is James Gallagher, and I'm running for State Assembly District 3. A little background on myself. I've spent my entire life in the 3rd District. I was raised in the small town of Rio Oso, down in South Sutter County on a small farm. And I went to local schools, graduated, went on and got my degree from UC Berkeley, and later a law degree from UC Davis. During that time, I also had the opportunity to work in a graduate fellowship in the State Assembly, in the state legislature, where I worked with Assemblyman Doug LaMalfa. And after that, I also had the opportunity to work both in the field office and in the district office on behalf of this region. For the past 7 years, I've been a practicing attorney in Yuba City, practicing business law, and I represent a lot of clients throughout the region, throughout the 6-county region here, and try and help them solve problems for their businesses and their families. And I've also been on the Sutter County Board of Supervisors for the past 6 years. I had the opportunity there to work on many issues, including water, flood control issues, local land use decisions, public safety issues. Been a part of a levee project that protects both Butte and Sutter counties. It's been something that I've taken since its infancy and worked with people throughout this region to bring that project to fruition. I'm proud of my record, and I believe that I'm uniquely situated to represent our area in Sacramento. And I'm running because I want to ensure that our region has 3 things: secure water rights and water supply for the future. I want to ensure that we have safe communities where our children can thrive. And the 3rd thing, jobs and opportunities for those who are willing to work in our region so that we can provide for our families. Thank you.
Well, I too graduated from UC Berkeley, Bachelor of Science degree in electrical engineering. And as you can imagine, engineering requires a lot of courses in science. And so what that has taught me is I have great respect for scientists. amazed at the science that's been created just in our lifetimes. Think of the computer and electronics industry we have today. That's all based on science that occurred during our lifetime. I recently visited a biomedical facility. Wow, what's developing there with the forensics and now developing genetic cures for things like cancer and other genetic related diseases. It's just amazing what science has done. And so when I hear scientists agree that climate change is occurring, I respect their position. I've even looked at some of the data they're looking at, and to me it's undeniable. Climate change is occurring, and not only is it occurring, but if we don't do something about it soon, it's going to be cataclysmic, and our children are going to be facing an absolute disaster. So I'm reminded of a similar problem we had just a few years ago. Remember, just a few years ago, there was this ozone hole developing in our atmosphere. And the scientists figured out that what was causing that hole to develop was Freon, refrigerant. And all the countries were using it, and California was the leader in getting rid of Freon, followed by the United States, and the rest of the world followed. And guess what? Just last week, we found out that in measuring that ozone hole, it's no longer getting bigger. In fact, it's recovering. So that is the model we need to follow when it comes to global warming.
Thank you. And first question tonight will come from the Chico News and Review to Mr. Gallagher.
Is the state of California losing businesses due to government overregulation?
Absolutely. I think it's undeniable. We have the highest tax rate in the nation. We have the highest regulatory burden of any state in the nation. And we are seeing the results. We've seen Toyota leave the state. We weren't able to land Tesla. We have lost jobs here in the North State. We've lost Campbell's Soup in Sacramento. We've lost a lot of food processors and others who have decided to move to other locations where they can. We've had people who would normally build in this state, build, Hullers, other types of businesses that have built instead in Nevada and other states in order to avoid the tax and regulatory climate in this state. And until we do something about that, we're going to have a big problem. And especially we're feeling it here in the North State where unemployment is growing higher. And we are not able to provide the kind of jobs and opportunities for people coming back from college, from our kids. They get a good education, they get out of school, and then they don't have a job to go to. We have to do something about the regulatory and tax climate in the state if we truly want to change that picture. And that's why when I hear things that, we need to do even more on global warming, we need to go beyond AB 32. AB 32 is a big factor in running jobs out of the state. And in terms of the diesel regulations, the burden that it puts on truckers, that it puts on farmers, that it puts on throughout all of the fingers of industry that's causing jobs to leave the state and leaving less opportunities for ourselves and for our children. We need to turn that around.
Well, I'd have to say that I completely disagree with Mr. Gallagher. As far as regulation is concerned, I would agree that California tends to overregulate small businesses, but they tend to underregulate big businesses. And when it comes to taxes, I agree there needs to be some reform, but it's not regulation and taxes that are the problem in California. In fact, I think you're completely missing the point when you come to realize that California has made a wonderful recovery since 2008. I watched New York advertising. New York has the second most startups in the whole nation, and you should come to New York. Well, guess who has the most startups? California has the most startups. We are now, if we were a country, the 8th largest economy in the world, and we have a real chance within the next year or two to move up to 5th place. California's economy is doing quite well. Now, here's the problem. Where the economy is doing well is in places like San Francisco, the Silicon Valley, and it's obviously not the regulation and taxes that are holding them back, But our area here, the more rural areas, aren't sharing in the benefits that San Francisco and the Silicon Valley and Los Angeles with Hollywood are doing, and we need to do something about that. And with a tax background, I think the thing about it is I like the idea of these enterprise zones that we no longer have. I think we have to go even a step further than that. We've got to give these successful companies an incentive to move to our rural areas. Chico is the perfect place. Chico is the perfect place with talented engineers coming out. High tech should be right here, and we simply have to give those companies an incentive to come here. It may be a tax incentive, it may be other things, but we've got to share the wealth with the rest of California. Thank you.
Thank you. Briefly, also, I would like to remind the audience that if you have any questions for our candidates, to please write your questions down on a card that is available at the back of the room, and if you hold it up, a page will bring you a card or come bring it up to us to ask as well. And our next question, Roger?
Gentlemen, I don't know either one of you particularly well. I'm going to give you one little bit of my own history. I've been a reporter in this county for 38 years, and I have covered many, many, many elections. And I tend to ask one question of every candidate: why would anybody in their right mind run for office?
Well, I guess I'm first, right?
Yes.
Well, first of all, I bring certain qualities to the position. I'm an engineer, I'm an attorney, I have followed politics for years, and so I think I have the background to know what we need to do and what to do. Now, I believe that even though California is the best state in the country, it can do better. And one of the things that I believe we need to do, and I believe I'm in the best position to do it, at least for this district, is we have a state government that's actually functioning pretty darn well right now. You just remember 4 years ago when Arnold Schwarzenegger was governor, we were in absolute gridlock. We couldn't pass a budget on time. State employees weren't being paid, but things have changed. And what's changed is we have a responsible governor. We have a legislature that's acting in the way a legislature should act. And what I want to do by going to Sacramento is work with the governor, work with the legislature to make our government more efficient. And in that process, I believe we can bring benefits back to our district that we're not getting if you have representatives, as we've had, that want to fight the government, want to try to bring the government back to gridlock. There's a penalty for taking that position, and we don't get the benefits we deserve in this district.
I'm running for a few different reasons. One is because I want to have opportunities for the future of this state and for our North State, for my children. My ancestors came to this country for opportunity, for a chance at freedom, and to build a life for them and a legacy for themselves. And they found it. They found it here in the North State. They settled here. They established a small farm, were able to provide for that family and able to grow that family. People had jobs and opportunities to move on to, and they prospered. I don't know that my kids are going to be able to have that. I think right now we're in California, we're on the wrong track. I don't know that my kids, when they graduate from college, are going to be able to go on to a successful career in this state. I don't know if they're going to have job opportunities where they can stay close to the family, where they can raise their own next generation here in Northern California. And so I firmly believe we have to change what's going on in this state. We're on the wrong track. I think that's probably the fundamental difference between myself and Mr. Reed, is I believe we're on the wrong track, and I think Mr. Reed believes we should continue down the track we're on. I don't think that's the right thing. I'm also running because that's what I was told by my parents, that you have an obligation to do something greater than just yourself. It's not enough to just take all of the benefits of society, to have been able to gone to good schools and get that education, to be able to have had opportunities and not give back to your community. So that was always instilled in me since I was a young age, and I want to continue to do that and represent this area and leave it better than it was handed to me, because I think that's the obligation of every generation, is to leave it not only not less but greater than it was given to you.
Thank you. This question is from the audience. What is your plan to repair area roads and bridges for public safety and for access to public lands for outdoor recreational activities? Mr. Gallagher?
Well, I think that we need to be opening up our public lands for recreational opportunities. I think it's a problem that we've established these public lands that are there for the public, and they aren't used. And as I think Senator Nielsen mentioned earlier, they're not managed properly either. And so we get the kinds of problems that we have with catastrophic fires that we're dealing with because we're not properly managing those public lands. But the other part of that is that we do need to be providing recreational opportunities, and those need to be opened up for the public. And the public lands are there because they are supposed to be there for the public. And if we're not doing that, then I would try to do that on my level. Of course, there's federal lands that we don't have as much control over, but we can certainly have influence on those decisions. And I would be a proponent for allowing more recreational opportunities in our public lands.
Well, I understood the question to be more than just use of recreation on public lands, which I do support, but it's a balancing act. And so what you've got to do is let the public use the public lands as long as it doesn't damage that land. And so it's always a balancing act. But what I heard the question to also include is, do we need to be investing in infrastructure? And if that's the question, the answer is absolutely yes. We have crumbling infrastructure. We had a little bit of a respite when the federal government pumped a lot of money into projects that we work with, but that money is now gone. There's no highway fund. California needs to step up in highways, bridges, what do you call it, the internet connections, all these things. We need to be investing in infrastructure, and the result of that will be much higher employment in California. The single most beneficial thing we can do is investing in infrastructure, and it will allow our private sector to succeed with that infrastructure. I hope I got the question right, but infrastructure to me is one of the maybe big three items we now need to invest in.
Thank you. Two questions on this have come through, so I'm going to go ahead and open the door to what is your position on the legalization of marijuana? And I will preface this, I guess, on your opinions of recreational use and medicinal marijuana as Prop 215 currently exists in the state of California. Beginning with Mr. Reed.
Yes. So certainly I've supported the legislation on medical marijuana. But when it comes to recreational marijuana, my position has kind of evolved. At one time, I thought it was a really bad idea. But as I say, as I understand the issues more, as I see what Colorado and Washington are doing, I've come to the conclusion that legalizing marijuana for recreational use is the right way to go. I find very little difference between alcohol and marijuana and the consequences of those, which can be bad in both cases. But one of the things that kind of changed my mind on this subject is realizing the environmental damage that these illegal groves are doing, both the private land and public land. And terrible things, rat poison getting into our streams, excess fertilizer, all kind of just terrible things happening. If we legalize marijuana, we can regulate that, because no longer will it be more profitable to be illegal. It'll be more profitable to be legal. So anyway, I'm also impressed with Colorado, which is reporting $10 million a week in taxes they're receiving by taxing marijuana. Now, I understand regulation is going to cost some money, but if Colorado is making $10 million a week, and California is so much bigger than Colorado, I think this is going to be a great source of revenue for California. Proposition 215 was passed by the California voters, and the intent of
the intent of that proposition was to provide medicinal marijuana for those people who have debilitating diseases that are facing things like cancer and those kind of tough diseases that help ease pain, that help them with those kind of things. That's not what we have in California, and I think everybody in this room knows that. It's been completely abused, and now anybody that has a headache can get a prescription and go and get the right to grow or to have medicinal marijuana. And what has happened is at the same time we have the federal government which has outlawed marijuana. So us at the local level, I'm a county supervisor, have to deal with this dichotomy of an abused system at the state level, and we also have a federal law that says this is illegal, period. And we've had to navigate that tough system. And it's at the local level where we've had to make tough decisions about how do we deal with medicinal marijuana here in California. There's a lot of impacts to the community, a lot of impacts to private property. People aren't able to enjoy their backyards because of the smells that are coming from nearby grows. People are living not safe. They don't feel safe in their own communities because of some of the people that are attracted to some of these areas where there's grows going on. There is criminal activity that we're seeing locally. In my own community in Rio Oso, we had someone have their home invaded and held at gunpoint, all because of marijuana that was being grown. Okay, so this is a serious problem in our local communities, and our local communities should be able to develop the solutions to deal with that. And I support local communities coming together and dealing with that issue and regulating it, for that matter. I don't support legalization because I think it will make the problem much worse. I don't think it's what we need to make us a productive and useful state into the future. That's not where we need to go. And so I support the local governments coming up with ordinances to deal with this problem, and I don't think the state should be getting involved in that.
Thank you. And our next question will come from Tom.
Okay, this was asked earlier, the prior candidates. Where do you stand on the practice of fracking, the extracting of oil and natural gas from shale rock?
Well, hydraulic fracturing has been used for many years throughout this nation. It's been used in the North State. I'm not aware of any of it going on in Butte County, but I know in Sutter County there are wells that are hydraulically fracked. I know in Colusa County there are, and it's a technology that we have that I think we're missing the point here. It's a technology that we have that is helping us to get cleaner energy, cleaner burning energy right here at home, and reduces our dependence on foreign oil and other energy sources. So I don't see why we would want to try and limit something that is going to help us. And the crude oil that we're developing here in North America, and the natural gas that we're developing right here at home, we can develop that into cleaner burning fuels, and we reduce our dependence on the Middle East. And especially with everything that we are seeing right now in the Middle East right now, the instability that we have there. Why do we want to continue our dependence on foreign oil when we can do so much of this right here at home? We can do it safely, and we can make ourselves more prosperous and more independent on some of these factors that we're facing in the international world. So I support that. I think we need to continue to. I don't think we should take that tool off of the table. I think that would be foolhardy for us to do so.
Well, I support Butte County's effort to ban fracking in Butte County, and I would encourage every other county in Northern California to do the same. California, or Northern California's water, is our most precious resource. And I know there's been a big effort to make fracking safe, and there's even some studies that show that it's fairly safe. But the fact of the matter is, those terrible chemicals they use in fracking, if they get into our aquifers, they could ruin our aquifers for hundreds of years. We can't take a chance. The one thing we know for sure is there's always human error. And if there's going to be human error using such terrible chemicals, we just can't take the chance that our most precious resource will be spoiled, and spoiled for not only our lifetimes but that of our children and grandchildren. Now, I would say I wouldn't ban fracking everywhere in the world, there are places where fracking might be acceptable, but when we put our most precious resource at risk, Northern California is not the place to do it.
Thank you. Roger?
One of the topics that's come up a lot in most of the North State in the last several months is the state of Jefferson. And there's a lot of impetus behind this drive to take a chunk of California and pull it off, because the people who support it don't think California is the place they want to live anymore. How do you react to the whole concept of Jefferson, and what do you say to those people who say California is not going the way they want it to?
Well, first of all, everybody should understand that I did not sign the Jefferson Declaration. I actually came out very early on with the position that I thought dividing California into 2 or 3 or so states might be beneficial in some ways, because, for one thing, smaller government with respect to state government can be more efficient. But more importantly, we are way underrepresented in Washington, D.C. The 22 smallest populated states have a population combined equal to California. They have 44 senators, we have 2. We're underrepresented in the Senate in Washington. And so dividing California could be beneficial. However, the Jefferson movement has gone off the tracks. What has to happen in order to create or divide a state? It's in the Constitution. The state legislature has to pass it, and then Congress has to pass it. As simple as that. California is controlled by Democrats. So what you need to do is put together a proposal, if you want to divide the state, that Democrats can buy into. But what the Jefferson proponents have done is they've gone far right on all the major issues. They talk about things that Democrats are just appalled to hear. And so there's virtually no Democrats that I know of that are supporting the state of Jefferson, which means there never will be a state of Jefferson.
I think that the Jefferson movement is a legitimate expression of the frustration that so many in the North State feel. And I don't think that these people want to leave California. I think they want the California back that they knew and loved, that it once was, before we had all these burdensome regulations, before we had the kind of tax regime we had, before we had education that costs so much that many people can't even send their kids to school, and let alone have a job for them when they come back out of those institutions. I'm traveling around this district, and I'm seeing and hearing from people, and they're not saying what Jim said earlier. They're not saying that things are great and the economy's back on track. They're out of work. They're seeing their jobs fade away. They're seeing their businesses under attack by regulators who show up at their doorstep and basically shake them down. That's the best word that I have for it. We have out-of-control regulators that are doing that. We have people that are getting sued for plowing their fields, for doing a basic agricultural activity that we've done for generations. They're getting sued and having to pay $1 million settlements to government agencies that are coming through. We're having people who are diverting from streams. They've had water rights for over 100 years and are being told, no, you can't divert that water unless you pay us a $50,000 fee for a streambed alteration permit. This is the kind of stuff that people are facing in the state, and they're legitimately frustrated because they're trying to provide an opportunity for their family. They're trying to provide for their kids. They want to they want to work. They want to go out and do all these things, and the only thing that's getting in the way is California's government bureaucracy. And I'll leave with just one last example. As a county supervisor, we had to replace a culvert in South Sutter County. And a project that would have cost maybe $30,000 at most ended up costing $500 million because of 7 different permits, $500,000 because of 7 different permits we had to get, all the regulatory hurdles we had to go through.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher.
That's money that could be better spent elsewhere, folks.
This next question is from the audience. What do you think about high-speed rail? And that question goes to Mr. Gallagher first.
I think we need to invest in infrastructure in this state that truly supports a productive future for our state. Water infrastructure, building new dams. We need to build Sites Reservoir in this state. We need to invest in our roads and our bridges and infrastructure here. So why, if that's the case, are we going to commit billions and billions of dollars to a high-speed rail that does literally go nowhere, that does not do anything to increase our overall productivity as a state, that doesn't do anything to harness our resources, and that will leave our kids paying the debt for generations to come? Absolutely not. We should not go through it. I think everybody that has looked at this project now knows it's going to cost way too much. It's going to burden our next generations too much. We need to put the stops on this, and let's start putting some money into real infrastructure that generates jobs and prosperity for the future.
Well, first of all, I love the idea of high-speed rail. I think it's great for the environment. It'll be good and a good infrastructure project. And the problem is, and I've seen how well these high-speed rails work in other countries. The trouble is they need to be designed by engineers. And this particular high-speed rail plan that we have was designed by politicians. And the unfortunate effect of that is it economically doesn't pencil out. So let's go back to the drawing board. We need to have high-speed rail, but it should be going directly between Los Angeles and San Francisco, the corridor where it will be used the most and do the most good and get the most for our money. And at the same time, again, be good for our environment.
Thank you. And our last question tonight also comes from the audience. This question was asked previously, but it's a little different this time. What are your views regarding climate change? Do you believe it exists, and if it's man-made? And what regulations should be strengthened if you do believe that it exists, or loosened in the alternative? And the first goes to Mr. Reed.
So I'm glad that question came up again because I didn't really get a full chance to explain it in my opening statement. So first of all, yes, it is real, and yes, it is man-made, and we can duplicate the same effect in a laboratory. So we know what's happening, and we now know there's more carbon in the air than there's ever been in the history, and that it's getting hotter every year, and if we don't do something soon, we're going to have a big problem. Now, to me, there's no denying global warming. But I know Mr. Gallagher has a different view. He denies global warming. He will tell you that the scientists don't have enough data to come to the correct conclusion, and I think that's complete baloney. We know what's happening, we need to do something. He'll also tell you that it's a waste of time for California to have something like Prop 32 to try to lead the rest of the world in the direction of reducing carbon. And again, California led the field, followed by the United States and the rest of the world when we got rid of Freon and are now closing the ozone hole. We can do the same thing with global warming. And California needs to be the leader. And the United States will follow, and the rest of the world will follow because the alternative is terrible. Mr. Gallagher will tell you this may reduce the bottom line for some companies. Well, if it takes reducing the bottom line for a few companies, we need to do it because saving our planet is way more important than the bottom line. It's way more important than allowing petroleum executives to make millions of dollars in bonuses. Thank you.
I think you should beware anytime somebody tries to say, hey, the debate's over, it's already over, nobody needs to even talk about it or think about it or look at the data themselves. Global warming is here and you just have to accept it and go along with our policies. No, that's not the way we do things in this country. And the fact is there is a lot of debate in the scientific community about whether or not man is causing the things that we're seeing and changes in weather patterns and things like that. There is a lot of data that we just don't have. We've only been able to study weather for a very limited period of time. And so we don't know, the full picture here. And we do know know, however, that there is changes in climate over time, that this Earth has experienced climate changes over the eons. So to automatically say that it is man-based carbon that is causing all of these things and causing these problems, and therefore the debate's over, we have to enact these policies, I think is wrong. I think there's a robust discussion that needs to happen about the issue. But you know what? Regardless of how you feel about climate change or global warming, AB 32 is bad policy. Because here's what. Let me just give you one example. Just the diesel truck rule. If we just did not have that rule at all and trucks went out by attrition, it would make just an insignificant difference in the amount of carbon that actually gets emitted over time. So we're not making really any difference by enacting this regulation, but it's putting real people out of work right now. It's shutting down industries. It's having a huge impact throughout the economy and people out of work. And why are we doing that? For something that's not even accomplishing the stated purpose. Furthermore, carbon does disperse evenly in the atmosphere. So if you stop doing, if you reduce carbon here in California, but the rest of the developing world is continuing to put carbon out in the atmosphere, it does absolutely nothing to the problem that they hypothesize is occurring. So that's bad policy. We should not be doing that. We need to get on the right track that's really based on true science.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. All right, now if candidates will have their closing statements, and the closing statement order will be Mr. Reed followed by Mr. Gallagher. Each of you will have 2 minutes.
Well, it scares me that we might send somebody to Sacramento who wants to completely ignore the idea of global warming. California led and the Freon situation, somebody needs the lead now, and California should be that leader. But what I really want to talk about in my closing, nobody asked about education. And in 2008, our funding for education was drastically cut. We had to do it to balance the budget because we weren't bringing in as much revenue as we had been bringing in before. And now we're starting to come back. We have a 10-year plan to restore educational funding, but that's not fast enough. And there's other things we want to do. For instance, I hate the idea of this rural fire tax. I personally don't think it's even constitutional. And there's a similar one with the bus fee. If a kid lives out in the rural area and needs to ride to school in a bus, they have to pay a fee to get to school. And some of these kids need to be educated more than, let's say, the average student. We need to fund these things. How are we going to do it? Because our income taxes are already plenty high enough. Our sales taxes are high enough. We don't want to change Proposition 13 with respect to homeownership, but there's a gaping hole we can fill, and that is the large industry should not have the advantage of Prop 13 like homeowners do. In 1977, when this Prop 13 was passed, 75% of the property tax revenue came from big commercial and industrial properties. That's completely changed today. Now 75% comes from homeowners, because homeowners tend to change every 7 years. There's a reassessment at that time. The corporations that own these big properties have learned how to game the system. They don't sell properties to be reassessed. They sell stock and avoid it.
Thank you. Mr. Gallagher?
Well, I think that we need a climate change in Sacramento, because the current climate that we have down there right now is taking us on the path to everyone being poor, everyone being out of jobs and opportunities, and to the Golden State losing its luster. That's the path that we're on right now. We have over $500 billion unfunded pension debt in this state when you look at all of the pensions throughout the state. We're in a huge debt. We're committing ourselves to billions and billions of more spending through the high-speed rail and other bonds like it. We are not doing anything to reform our environmental regulations, which right now, to do a project in this state under CEQA, doing all the notices and everything you have to go through from start to before you can even build a single thing, will take you 1.5 years. And you wonder why we can't attract a business to this state and why other states are taking business away from us. This is what we're doing. This is the path that we're on. And this is the critical choice in this election, I think, for the voters out there, is do you want to continue upon that path? Do you want to send someone down there who's going to join that choir down there who's taking us down that path? Or do you want to be part of the climate change that can bring us back to being the Golden State again, where we have a prosperous economy, where we invest in real infrastructure that helps and supports our communities, where we have education that's affordable, and where our kids actually get to go to those colleges and we're not selling them out to the highest bidder, and foreign students that the UC is now admitting at a higher rate than ever before, where we can really get back on the right track and make sure that our communities are safe. We didn't really talk a whole lot about public safety tonight. Our communities are less safe because of AB 109. Because our law enforcement is left without the tools to effectively deal with criminals. These are not just nons. These are some serious felons that are getting into our communities and are making us less safe. We need to get back on the right track. With your support, we'll get it done.
Thank you, Mr. Gallagher. Thank you, Mr. Reed, Mr. Gallagher. Can we have a round of applause for our folks? We'll take a brief 5-minute break to switch forums. Our next forum will be for Butte County Assessor. If anyone has any questions for the assessor's race, I recommend you go write your questions down on cards and we will take them up here. Thank you.
Yep, I haven't actually reviewed it like you told me to, but I don't think anything's changed. All right.
Yeah, I was talking to Melissa. Not tonight. Yeah. I really believe you mentioned that because the letter was said, you said,
So that's the right thing to do. It's funny, I'm a pretty complex person. I love to talk to you guys. Somehow we got sideways. We started off over a street ago. Yeah, me saying something party food is the best. Change it. Give me something.
If we could take our seats so that we can move on to the Assessors Forum, that would be wonderful. If everyone could please take their seats so we can get the forum started. Our next forum is for Butte County Assessor. Our candidates are Diane Brown and Bill Connolly. The candidates drew numbers to determine who would be opening first. Diane Brown will open and Bill Connolly will follow, and the closing order will be the reverse. This forum will be set up the same manner in that the candidates will have 2 minutes for open, 2 minutes for close, and 2 minutes to answer questions. And we will be asking questions back and forth between the Chico News and Review and the Enterprise Record. So
We have a new reporter.
I'm sorry, we do have a new reporter. For the Chico Enterprise Record, Ashley Gebb will be asking questions tonight. If the candidates are ready, we can go ahead and get started with opening statements, starting with Ms. Brown.
Okay, thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Thank you, everybody, for showing up. I want to give you a little bit of my background. I started with the office back in August of 1983. I started as a typist clerk, so I started from the very bottom, worked my way up through the office. I'm currently a principal appraiser. My duties include doing the most difficult appraisals in addition to advising junior staff on matters of appraisal. My educational background, I obtained an associate degree while working for the county. I'm very proud of the fact that I graduated with honors while having a full-time job with the county, in addition to raising a son and keeping the books for my husband's trucking business. So I had a pretty full plate. So I'm really proud of the fact that I did graduate with honors. I have numerous certificates of appraisal classes that I've taken. I obtained my appraiser certificate in 1990. It's required for the assessor position. I have my advanced certificate. I obtained that in 1995. I was responsible for supervision of the Paradise Branch office. I've performed difficult appraisals. Last year I did 900 appraisals in addition to 1,800 Prop 8 reviews. I've got 25 years of appraisal experience in addition to my 30 years of experience in the office. I decided to run for this position because I wanted to affect the changes that I wanted to see in the office. I think we need to tighten up our training program. I think we also need to update our standards. And I would like to take those jobs on, and that's why I'm running for this position. I think I'm the most qualified person for this position, and that's why I'm asking for your support. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Bill Conley. Many of you know me. I've been a county supervisor for the last 10 years from District 1. I was raised in Butte County and have effectively run a small business for many years, and then went on to be elected to position of county supervisor, a position which I might add I'd never held before. The reason I think I'm qualified for this job and the reason I'm running for this job is I looked from a county board of supervisors position down at the department, and there's many problems. For example, the rolls haven't been on time. For many years, they haven't been on time. The majority of a decade, they've been late. And how does that impact local government? It impacts in a very negative way. If the rolls aren't on time, sometimes people have to go out and get a loan. Chico is an example of that. Here they are in a stressed environment trying to get by. The rolls weren't on time, and they had to go out and borrow money against their income that they're waiting for. And that's why I'm endorsed by many people, a broad spectrum of people, two congressmen, by 2 assemblymen, a state senator, all of the all of the city council members of Gridley, Biggs, 4 on the Chico City Council, 3 out of 5 on Paradise, and that would include Randall Stone, Tammy Ritter, and Ann Schwab right here in Chico have endorsed me because they know that you can work with me. You know that I will always protect the local people against the excesses of government. This is a position that I uniquely fit because of my experience in private and government side. Government, 2,300 employees, a $400 million budget that's been on time and balanced even in the worst recession of our lives. And by the way, thank you for having me here tonight. I really appreciate your efforts. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll start the questions off with Tom. Ms. Brown will go first in alphabetical order.
All right, I would ask, can you explain to taxpayers and citizens, kind of the same, the significance of running the assessor's office?
The assessor's office creates the assessment roll. Off of that, 60% of the assessment roll finances 60% of, let me start again. The assessment roll, 60% of that, of the assessments on the assessment roll, fund public safety. All of the general purpose revenues come from the assessment roll. So it's really important that the assessment roll be correct. This year, for the first time for as long as I can remember, we actually did complete the roll on time. Right now, at one time we had 26,000 properties under Prop 8 review. We've reduced that probably now down to about 20,000 parcels under Prop 8 review. So it's important that the person who is running the office understand what that means, pulls them out correctly, and gets the property values right. Public safety depends on it. All the other departments depend on it. The assessment roll is vitally important for the economy of Butte County and for all of the special districts that are involved, for the public safety. 75% of the public safety revenue comes from, it funds not only the probation department, but DA, sheriff's department. All of that comes from the assessment roll because it's dependent on the general purpose revenue. and that's provided by property tax revenue. And so it's really important that the assessment roll be done right and be done by somebody who knows what they're doing. It has to be done by a certified appraiser. If it's not signed by a certified appraiser, then anybody who has an assessment on that roll could sue the county for malfeasance.
Thank you, Ms. Brown.
Could you please repeat the question?
Yeah, if you could explain to the average person, the taxpayer, the citizen, the significance of running the assessor's office.
Oh, the assessor's in charge of 40 employees. He delegates his authority down to appraisers and so forth. He's in charge of a $3.5 million budget, and he is accountable for $19 billion in properties within Butte County that need to be assessed. He runs a budget of about $3.5 million, and the assessor's job is to fairly assess property values so the tax rates which are set elsewhere and collected elsewhere are applied in an even manner. I think it's very important to elect somebody that looks out after the average citizen and a small businessman first and doesn't come from a background of just being in that position, because it just doesn't give you the real world view. Somebody like myself that understands that an overassessment of your property can be very damaging to your future. And so I think that's why you need a person like me that has experience running the county with 2,300 employees when I started, a little over 2,500 now, a $400 million budget, now close to $500 million. And even again, during the worst economic downturn, we kept services up and kept the budget within limit, which is only one of 10 counties in the whole state. And there's 58 counties, if you want to know. I think that I'm well aware what it takes to run this office, and I'm willing to delegate authority to people that work hard for the general public, and to make sure that they're held to task, and to make sure you, the taxpayer, are fairly assessed.
Thank you. Our next question will come from Ms. Gebb.
So both of you mentioned changes within the office as one of your motivations for running. I'd like to give you an opportunity to discuss those changes a little bit further in detail, as well as talk about how you would affect those changes and how much of a priority you would place on getting those done.
Am I first? Okay, first off, it's not very common, but there are rare instances of people being treated rudely, and I just think that's something we can't do to the general public. That, as a county supervisor, people would call me and say, hey, you know, I had a problem, I was treated rudely, I would take it up to the chain of command and they would deal with it. I think that's a culture change that needs to happen. Somebody from the outside needs to come in and look at that. Next off, I think that the technology lacks in the assessor's office. There's a real need to upgrade technology. The technology exists to where we could do these Prop 8 adjustments in a much rapid manner. I would look to places like Santa Clara County, award-winning in their efforts to do that. And that was something that we need to look at, where an outside person could come into this culture and change that. And lastly, I think that the employees need to know that they're the most valued part of the department. As long as they're doing their job well, I'm absolutely a very fair person. I learned this when I was in the military. I never judge people by what they look like, or religion, color, ethnic, whatever. I can get along with anybody. You have to praise, and you need to make them part of the team. You need to bring them into the team and implement the change that you give vision for. It takes somebody from the outside coming in. This is an elected position to protect the public from bureaucracy just perpetuating itself. And those are some of the changes I'd like to see done.
As far as our technology goes, we have brand new computers. Our software is upgraded to the point where if we were upgraded anymore, we wouldn't be able to communicate with our property tax software company or other departments. So we're as upgraded as far as we could go. Where I'd like to focus on is our standards program. Our standards haven't been updated in several years because we haven't had the staff or the time to do them. So I would like to upgrade our training manual and our standards manual so that we're, and institute a program where all 3 of our branch offices are all on the same page as far as how our appraisals are done and how all of our paperwork is done. And the second part I would like to do is training. We've had a lot of turnover and a lot of new people on board. And so there are times when properties can get reappraised and other times when like new construction is not subject to reappraisal. And there are certain things you can look at and look for to determine whether or not it's a reappraisable transfer. There are certain handicap improvements you can make to your home that you can get exempted from reappraisal. If it's made to make the house more livable or more accessible for handicapped people, then those improvements, which would normally be reappraisable, can be exempted. And so there's certain things that people that haven't been there for a while don't know what to look for. And those are things that I would like to institute in my training program, is just bringing the new people on board, showing them exactly what to look for. Those are things that in my 25 years of doing appraisals, what I look for when I'm doing appraisals. And so there's certain things that you can do to help the taxpayers out and save them money that some of the newer staff doesn't know about. And those are things that I would like to institute in the training program.
Thank you. Some of the audience members are having a little bit difficulty hearing Ms. Brown, so if you could talk a little bit closer into the microphone, that would be great.
Okay.
Our next question from the audience: would you tell us how much the assessor is paid including benefits, and do you think the salary is too low, about right, or too high? And this question goes first to Ms. Brown.
The base salary, I believe, is around 120-something thousand with benefits. I really don't know. It's not something that's been really important to me, so I haven't really checked. I'm more concentrated on doing the job. The salary and benefits are not something that I've really even checked into. It's not something that's been important to me, so I really don't know.
I believe it's $120,000. There's a car allowance and there's some medical allowance and such. Actually in the real world, I can match the salary. But I've offered in my campaign statement to take a 5% pay cut for a couple of reasons. One is when the Board of Supervisors voted to cut every employee in the county 5%, we took that cut. And unfortunately, many of the elected departments didn't, and I don't think it was fair that they didn't, and I'm offering that right out front. If it would be up to the taxpayers, to re-elect me after 4 years and see how it goes from there. But I've already offered that up. It's in my statement. It'll be on the ballot.
Thank you. What are your plans for the first 90 days in office if you are elected? This question goes to Mr. Connolly first.
Well, I think the first thing is to, after I'm elected, I will definitely be on a fast track for education. I really enjoy reading and learning and becoming educated on issues and on the department. I'll make as many visits as they'll allow me to do, get to know who the people are, how they interact, and what their responsibilities are. Then after that, I will make decisions as to where we can make changes with their suggestions. It's got to be a team. They'll need a leader that'll be there early and leave late, and that'll be me, and they're going to have to tell me their suggestions for changes, and I'll rely on their suggestions to make what, in my judgment, are good, and we'll do that. That's what leaders do. It's not going to be a big radical change in the first 90 days. As far as the technology, I'll say they may have the newest computer programs, may have the newest computers, but they are not up to date with other counties, and we need to look at that, and we need to catch up to other counties. In fact, in some cases, the assessor's programming is not accessible by other departments. So that's a silo that I'd like to break down, and I'd like to use the employees to do that and learn how we could work together and serve the public better.
Can you repeat the question, please?
Yes, what would you do in the first 90 days?
Well, the first 90 days, if elected, I would have to transition from my current position into as far as relieving myself of my current assignment and get ready for my new role, which means I would have to train somebody to take over what I'm doing now and get rid of the projects that I'm doing, and then work into my new role. Chances are I probably have to hang on to some of them because I wouldn't be able to bring up some of the somebody up to speed, but that would probably be what I would have to do in the first 90 days is get rid of my current appraisal assignment and try to work somebody into it, and then so I could take on my new role.
Thank you. Tom?
Okay, this is a subject that came up in an earlier forum this evening, and I realize you have no direct control over this, but should Proposition 13 be re-examined, revisited after 36 years in place?
No, I don't think so. I think it's working well. You know, it's come up that, you know, residential property turns every 7 years. I've been in my house for 30 years, so I don't know where that 7-year figure came up with. I think even going after the commercial property is a slippery slope. To kick it open and even attempt to do that, I think, is dangerous. And so, you know, Proposition 13 was passed in 1978 to, you know, keep property taxes as something that people could count on, to know what they were going to be from year to year, so people could know how to budget. I think it took the tax rates out of the Board of Supervisors' hands, and so it set it at 1% plus bonded indebtedness. I think even breaking it open for commercial properties, I think is dangerous. And so, you know, there's a lot of talk about, oh, commercial properties don't turn as often, and so it needs to be taken out. I just think it's a slippery slope to even go there. So I think it should be left just like it is.
You put me in an awkward situation because I have an opponent that I admire and know that she's worked really hard at her job, but at the last forum I was at, she had a 180-degree look at this. She said it was okay on the residential side, but it should be adjusted on the commercial side. And I actually advocated that that's a dangerous slope because, look, you know, we're one of the most taxed and regulated states in the nation. And when a small business has their property taxes reassessed, it really hurts them. And here we are struggling to keep our small businesses in place. So I'm surprised that Diane Brown agrees with me so much now. I mean, I can't add much to what she said. I'm surprised you changed your mind, but that's good.
Ms. Gabb?
If elected, what do you anticipate your greatest challenge will be in office, and how do you plan to overcome that?
To Mr. Connolly?
I think there's a culture there that we've promoted people from within the department, and they have a different look or view at the public. And I think it will be my responsibility to teach them that the public always comes first and should be treated with as much kindness and honesty as we can at all times. I think, too, to teach them that if there's latitude to give in an assessment, we should err on the side of the citizen. You know, somebody mentioned earlier that this part of our funding goes to our general fund. Well, 85% of it goes to the state. Only 15% of it ends up in the local coffer. So I'd hate to damage a local individual. If there's any give at all, I will give. I want to teach the department to give to the public because it really doesn't hurt us that bad, and it really could damage somebody's life. The over-assessing a property is a dangerous thing, and I would always want to teach change the culture to help the public at all times and to lean towards them and to make sure that we're always fair, but if there's any doubt, give that over to the public. And I think that'll be the biggest challenge. The next thing is to let them know that I'm a leader. I'll be there first and I'll leave last. And I will lead by example. I will work hard. And I will delegate my authority as necessary to get it done and to keep the job done in the right way. And I don't think they're used to that. I mean, I don't want to say bad things, but I plan on being there before everybody and leaving after everybody. And I think that'll be a culture shock for them too.
The greatest challenge we have is the amount of properties under Prop 8 review. At one time, it was 26,000. It's down to about 20,000. Some of those properties, it's going to take years before the base year value is reestablished. From our high point, we had gone back to 2000 and pulled anything that had transferred from 2000 forward, and that was what we set as our point to do our Prop 8 reviews. And for those people who don't know, a Prop 8 review is when the market value of a property falls below its factored base year value under Prop 13. Prop 8, which is kind of like a sidecar that runs along Prop 13, allows us to go in and lower its value to the market value until the market value catches up with its factored base year value under Prop 13. So originally we had 26,000 properties under Prop 8 review. Now we're down to about 20,000. But our biggest challenge is going to be pulling the rest of those properties out from under Prop 8. It's going to take a while for some of them, but we're going to have to be careful not to pull those out too quickly, because the market is kind of, it's going in bumps. It's going up and then it's kind of stalling, and then it's going up a little bit and then it's stalling. So we need to make sure that we don't pull those properties out too fast and pull them out at higher than market rates. And that's going to be our biggest challenge, is getting those properties back to their factored base year value.
Thank you. The assessor needs to be able to lead a team. How many employees have you supervised?
I've supervised 3 total, actually 4 total. For a year, I ran the Paradise branch office, and so I supervised a team of 3 different appraisers and a clerk when I ran the Paradise office. Currently, I don't supervise anyone, but I am helping to just kind of guide junior staff. Although I'm not supervising anyone, and I've only supervised 4 people, people look to me for leadership in the office, and so I don't think I'll have any problem at all because of my leadership role within the office, even though I don't supervise. Because of my leadership role within the office, I don't believe I'm going to have a problem taking on the role of assessor.
Thank you, Mr. Connolly.
Okay, you know, learning to supervise people goes way back to when I was in the military, and I made an NCO position in 1971, 72, and I had 11 people. We kept an aircraft in the air. From that point, you know, I came back, started a janitorial company, had it built up to 9 people, 3 vans running every night. I got that going, sold it out. Moved on to some construction work where I'd supervise up to 40 people in the Bay Area. I mean, you could call for reference Dotson Properties. I started as a carpenter, ended up running the entire job site. And from there, you know, I've had my own construction company, various people, 7 or 8 or 9 at the most. We're down to 3 right now, I admit. But as a county supervisor, I've been over 2,500 people, you know, with the help of Larry Wall and 3 other people. We supervise a lot of people, and we've had to deal with 9 different unions. And I understand how it works, and I understand how to give direction to people. And meanwhile, since I've been in office, I've taken no less than 5 leadership classes through CSAC. I've tried to educate myself on how to build a team and how to motivate people and how to work together and how to reach common goals. And in one class, I was even asked to give input to his book, which was called Tribal Leadership. So I think I'm prepared to lead this many people, 40. It's not overwhelming. It's not a podunk county where I'm going to go out and do appraisals and things like that. That is something that I have to delegate. It is a leadership position. You need a strong person right behind you, and you need to delegate your authority in a rational and reasonable manner, and you have to give direction, and I'm the person to do that.
Thank you. Can you think of any way to make the office of assessor more efficient? Mr. Connolly?
I'm up. Well, I think we talked about it. The technology exists in other counties where they've gotten rid of most of their paper files, and they're not referring to them like they do in Butte County. I think that's one way to make it. And I think ongoing, I'll agree with Mrs. Brown that education is very important. You need to be able to allow your employees to become educated, even pay for that education to allow them to improve themselves. And I believe that there's a lack of leadership in the assessor's office right now. The way I understand it, it's broke down. You got the assessor, you got his assistant, and then you don't have any people over people, you know what I mean? You got to break it down. Like in the military, you got your officers and you got your sergeants and then you got your enlisted people. We're lacking the sergeants right now, and I think that needs to change. I think the efficiency is going to rely on technology, and technology is it's a revolution in technology, and we need to keep up with it, and we need to educate ourselves on it, and we need to make sure that we're using it to the greatest benefit of the public. And that is probably where we can get the most efficiency in the future, educating our people, working as a team, and implementing new technology.
We've managed to make ourselves more efficient by working within our property tax software. We've managed to work through spreadsheets to input data rather than doing it through paper, doing it through spreadsheets. And so it allows us to input data much more efficiently than we used to. All of our Prop 8 reviews are done on spreadsheets rather than just doing it on paper, so that we can do mass appraisal versions of our Prop 8 reviews rather than just doing it as one at a time. So we kind of do a hybrid version of a mass appraisal program, not quite like what the banks do, but a little bit kind of a hybrid version between a singular appraisal and mass appraisal. So we've done some techniques to make ourselves much more efficient than we used to be. At one time, we had about 85,000 or 80,000 parcels. We had 50 employees. We now have about 90,000 employees, and we were down to 38 employees. We're now up to 42 full-time employees. So we've learned to do a lot more with a lot less people, and we've had to become a lot more efficient. And so we've learned to do that using technology. And so, even though we haven't been able to our computers are fine, our software is fine, we've managed to do some technological upgrades, within the confines of what we currently have.
Thank you. And this next question goes to Tom.
Yes, can you give an example of the possible consequences of an improper assessment? What can come out of that?
An improper assessment can create an underassessment to where the taxpayers basically get cheated because the property is not assessed at the proper rate. Can create an overassessment where the taxpayer ends up having to pay too much. If the property isn't properly assessed when we get audited by the State Board of Equalization, if we're not within 95% of the assessed value that they come up with, it can cost the county money in supplemental assessment funds. It can cause assessment appeals, which costs the county time and money and staff time. There's a variety of things that it can cause. It's a waste of county resources. It sounds like we're over-assessing everybody. We're not. We follow property tax laws. It's not that we don't get great pleasure in over-assessing taxpayers. We follow the laws that we're required to follow, and our property tax values are within the guidelines set by the State Board of Equalization following the property tax laws. And so we try not to overassess or underassess. It's a matter of pride for us.
Well, for one example is when the assessor mismeasured a property for one of my constituents, and it's a big deal to them because it triggered school fees and so forth. And it took almost 3 years trying to go through the appeals process and finally get somebody out there to remeasure and find out there was a 50-foot error. So again, I would always want to protect the public from something like that. The other thing is in the Prop 8 reassessments, we took a dive under Prop 8 you were allowed to lower property values. And it seems like that we're being pretty aggressive in Butte County on how we reassess those properties. For example, if the state may be rising at a 2 or 3% a year recovery, but it's not happening in Butte County. So I think that we should always err on the side of the local people. There is some discretion. We may be regulated by law, but the assessor has to set the tone and make sure that this happens as slow as possible. This is not to impact our local residents. We're not enjoying some great resurgence of the economy like they are San Jose, for example. It's bleeding over into the Bay Area, a little bit into Sacramento, but we're way behind that. So I think that in proper assessment right now, I got to be careful that we're not over-assessing people's property values.
Thank you. And the last question will come from Ms. Gebb.
Customer service has been brought up tonight by both candidates, whether in regard to how taxpayers are treated or how their properties are assessed. What are your objectives in this regard?
I'm up, right?
Yes.
Well, I think it's very, very important to treat the public with respect. I mean, as a supervisor, I've run into some pretty cantankerous people, but you can handle it, and we need to teach that all the way down to the counter people or whoever comes out from the back and talks to them. I've had several complaints about the appeals board being very rude to people. This is the facts, this is the way it is, you got to take it the way I'm giving it to you. And that's just not the culture that we need there. We need to always treat, even when the public thinks they're right and we know they're wrong maybe, you've got to treat them with respect. They're the taxpayers that pay our way. And it's in my heart to teach people to do that. I mean, you just got to learn how to handle people, and which I think I'm pretty good at. I get along with a lot of different people, and I think I can teach that and change the culture there. There has, again, been several complaints about the way people have been treated at the assessor's office. And it wasn't the fact that they were right or wrong, it was the fact that they were just flat treated rudely. It doesn't happen every day, it doesn't happen every week, but it happens occasionally, and that's just too many times. So I'd like to change that.
As far as the appeals board goes, we have no control over them. They are a separate entity. They don't answer to us. They answer to the Board of Supervisors. So Mr. Connolly would have more control over them than we would. As far as the culture in the office goes, we pride ourselves on our customer service. We have had more compliments on our customer service in the last year than we have had in any other time. So our counter people have had more letters and more people bringing us cookies and stuff because of the way they were treated at the counter than we have ever seen. So I don't know about this rudeness stuff, but we have, I know I personally had to deal with a gentleman that he was so angry when I started out, he was shaking. But by the time I was done with him, we were fine. He was smiling. We were, on good terms. That's the way we pride ourselves on leaving people. It doesn't do any of us any good to antagonize taxpayers and leave them angry. It's not a good contact. It doesn't help them. It doesn't help us. The best way is to leave the people leaving like they were, even if they didn't agree with this, at least leaving them knowing that what their rights were, at least having their issue explained to them so that they could understand what happened and knowing what their options were. That's the goal of our office, and the goal of every contact that we make is that people understand what's going on and knowing what their options are. And that's our goals.
Thank you. We will now commence with closing statements. I would like to let the audience know as well that following closing, our president will have a couple announcements that she would like to make. So if you guys would stay seated and for a few minutes after closing, that would be very appreciated. As far as closing order goes, we will have Mr. Connolly close first, and Ms. Brown will follow him. You guys will have 2 minutes to make your closing statements.
Well, first off, I'd like to thank everyone for being here and taking time out of your lives. it's really important to engage in government. I wish this room was just packed to the outside. Next, I'd like to tell you that if you elect me, you'll get what you see. You can ask anybody. I'm honest. I'm upfront. I tell you what's on my mind. I get things done in a way that protects the public at all times. This is not an appraiser's position. This is an assessor's position. Our forefathers had the foresight to make this an elected position to make sure that there was a disconnect between bureaucracy and this position. This position is an elected position to protect the public from aggressive government. And that's why it's important to get somebody from the outside looking in to change the culture. I think, you know, you can say what we want, but the roles being late for most of a decade speaks volumes to what's been going on there. And that's really impacted people. It cost the city of Chico $10,000, for example. And that's why I have the endorsement of so many of the city council people around the county. They're worried about the assessor's office. And I'd like to point out that I'm also very approachable. I'm sure I'm going to get along with Mrs. Brown if I happen to be elected. I'll get along with everybody in the office. But I also give back to the community. You know, I remember coaching Little League. I did an American Legion baseball program for 10 years. I've belonged to the Rotary, the Eagles, the Masons, the Shrine. I mean, I'm a person that really cares about his community, and I've proven it over the last 20 years. And I'm just asking, and humbly, respectfully, and asking for your vote, put me in a position to help you and protect the public. Thank you.
In the assessor's office, we deal with a lot of kind of values. We've got market values, assessed values, restricted values. I believe I bring the greatest value to the office. You can elect my opponent, or you can elect me. If you elect my opponent, you're going to pay him to learn what I've spent 30 years already learning. You're going to pay him to learn what I already know. I've spent 30 years preparing myself for this position. We don't have the staff or the budget in the assessor's office for someone to come in and just watch us work. Everyone in the office has an assignment. Everyone in the office has to carry a load. The assessor is an appraiser. That's why it's required that the assessor obtain an appraiser's certificate from the State Board of Equalization. I have that. I obtained mine in 1990. I obtained my advanced certificate in 1995. That's required in order to certify the assessment roll when it's turned over to the auditor. It is an appraiser's position, not just an assessor, not just an elected official, not just an administrator. The worst form of bureaucracy is to put someone in charge of the office, pay them a huge salary, and they have no idea what's going on in the office. I appreciate your support. On November 4th, let's do something different. Thank you.
Thank you. Could we have a round of applause?
Thank you.
Thanks for staying, everybody. I'll be quick. I want to thank all the candidates for coming tonight, for the audience that was here. One thing I forgot to announce at the beginning of the evening, and this might make Mr. Conley feel a little better, we didn't always fill this room, but we've been on Channel 11, public access television through Comcast all evening. And I think there's a big viewing audience at home. You'd be surprised how many people said they saw us on the television. So I think it's a good thing to come to Chico and be in one of our forums here. The other thing is on Wednesday night, we'll be right back here again, 6:30. We have the Congressional District Number 1 race, Mr. LaMalfa and Heidi Hall. We have the Chico City Council, and we are going to do the Chico Unified School District. And I want to explain that ahead of time. we have 4 candidates on our ballot. You may have heard one of them has withdrawn. They withdrew after the deadline. So they are a valid candidate on the ballot and theoretically could be elected. So we're going to let the candidates come and speak on Wednesday night, and we have offered that other candidate an opportunity to be there. We'll let you know on Wednesday. I'm not sure that she accepted. But anyway, if you wonder why we're doing that for a race that seemed like a already drawn conclusion, it isn't. So anyway, I hope to see you Wednesday night, and thanks for coming and supporting the League. And look us up on smartvoter.org. The candidates post their information there. Most of them do. I hope more do. And there's a lot of other good information there. Thank you. Good night.